Once again, Jay Winderley and Robert Brainig have deceptively relied on their readers being without the source material in question and dressed up a straw man to lead their audiences astray from actual research. To get back to the subject, in 1994, Jim Lovell explicitly stated that Grissom hung a lemon on the command module. But when sued by Bill Casing in 1997, Lovell told us the exact opposite. True, it could be argued that Lovell was stating that the lemon was not hung on the day Grissom was killed, but in that case, why did he not give the correct date in his answer? So it seems there are three versions to the lemon story. One is that Gus hung a lemon on the actual spacecraft, as Betty Grissom, Frank Borman, Peter Bond, and Jim Lovell told us. The second is that Gus did not hang a lemon on the spacecraft, as Lovell later backpedaled. The third story, told by Winderley, that it was the simulator, not the spacecraft, that Grissom hung the lemon on. On their respective websites, Robert Brainig and Phil Plait dodged the lemon incident altogether, and instead insult Bill Casing for even considering the idea of NASA murdering their astronauts.
This is so disgusting. I have a hard time writing a coherent reply. Casing has no grasp of basic physics, photography, or even common sense, but he accuses NASA of killing people to shut them up. This is a pretty loathsome accusation. There's not much I can say here, other than the accusation is a complete fabrication with no corroborating evidence whatsoever. Some hoax advocates claim there have been many suspicious deaths among those associated with the Apollo program, alleging that NASA murdered these people. These accusations are both ludicrous and libelous. Bill Casing particularly has made many slanderous allegations against NASA. Yet, when former astronaut Jim Lovell called him wacky, Casing had the gall to file suit against Lovell. Wisely, the suit was dismissed.
As we established earlier, neither of them dare comment on Operation Dirty Trick. More recently, when debating with Joe Rogan, Phil Plait was forced to comment on the Apollo 1 fire and the lemon that Grissom hung on the spacecraft.
One big problem with Apollo moon hoax conspiracy theories is that a lot of stuff is stated as absolute fact, when in fact it isn't. For example...
Well, it is an absolute fact that he put a lemon on a hanger and hung it over the lemon. It's an absolute fact that he burned to death that very lemon.
What is he did hang a lemon on. That was because of the communications issues they were having.
He was saying this thing wasn't going to work. No.
Hang on.
He's been quoted many times as saying that the whole problem, the whole program's in jeopardy, and he didn't think it was going to work. He thought the thing was a lemon.
He didn't think the whole thing was a lemon. He was having certain issues with some of the subsystems.
If he was just having issues with subsystems, why would he publicly put a lemon on a hanger and hang it on the lunar module? That is a monstrous statement from the #1 astronaut in the country.
Yeah, Gus Grissom was a pain in the butt to a lot lot of people. He was a loud guy, very forceful personality.
That sounds like the kind of guy I would kill.
And
if I was running things,
put the if I were is probably better.
If I was running things,
they were doing some tests, and the communication systems weren't working right because these guys were working day in and day out, and it wasn't working right. And he got really frustrated, and he hung a lemon in there, and he was actually yelling something about how are we supposed to get to the moon if we can't talk between two buildings?
Right now,
the exact quote that Plait is referring to is Grissom's famous, "How are we going to get to the moon if we can't talk between two buildings?" To simplify what Plait is saying is that angered over the communication problems he faced when he made that statement, Grissom then went and hung a lemon on the capsule.
Goddamn, if I can't talk to you 5 miles away, how am I going to contact you from the moon?
They were doing some tests, and the communication systems weren't working right because these guys were working day in and day out, and it wasn't working right. And he got really frustrated, and he hung a lemon in there, and he was actually yelling something about how are we supposed to get to the moon if we can't talk between two buildings?
Now let's play the audio communications from the Apollo 1 spacecraft, and see if that's actually the way it happened.
Hey, how are we gonna get to the moon if we can't talk between three buildings? I can't hear a thing you're saying. Jesus Christ. Again? And how are we gonna get to the moon if we can't talk between two or three buildings? Hey! Oh, it's got fire in the cockpit.
And the communication systems weren't working right because these guys were working day in and day out, and it wasn't working right. And he got really frustrated, and he hung a lemon in there, and he was actually yelling something about, how are we supposed to get to the moon if we can't talk between two buildings?
Clearly, Plate is not being truthful in his story. The lemon incident happened well before the communication problems. How are we going to get to the moon if we can't talk between two buildings were Grissom's last recorded words? Plate should know that. After all, it was made clear in the Fox special he reviewed.
On January 27, 1967, 2 years before the first moon landing, Grissom and his crew boarded the Apollo 1 capsule for a full-scale simulation. The problems began almost immediately. First, the capsule's communication systems failed.
You copy? No, I didn't read you, Chuck, at all. I can't read you, Chuck. You want to try the phone? Hey, how are we going to get to the moon if we can't talk between three buildings? I can't hear a thing you're saying.
Suddenly, the capsule burst into flames with the astronauts sealed inside.
They were doing some tests, and the communication systems weren't working right because these guys were working day in and day out. It wasn't working right. And he got really frustrated, and he hung a lemon in there, and he was actually yelling something about, how are we supposed to get to the moon if we can't talk between two buildings?
Tragically, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee lost their lives before ever leaving the launch pad.
You got a capsule that's been cranked up to about 20 psi pure oxygen.
Yeah?
You ready?
Yes.
All of them couldn't decide exactly what pressure was in there. Of course, somebody plunked the switch. You know what happens when you throw a switch? You get an inductive arc. You know that, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, that inductive arc on bakelite in an oxygen atmosphere is, an arc is plasma. Nobody knows the temperature inside of an arc. Did you know that?
That's news to me.
It's all guesswork. G-U-E-S-S work. So that little spark in a bakelite thing, which ordinarily you don't want to burn, would have been enough to set that cooking. The instant you get a little tiny fire, the oxygen force feeds it. And what do you have? You have a total disaster within a second.
Bad leader, get in there and help him. Bad leader, CFCC. Yes, can you read us? Can you get him out of this?
The bastards left all the flammable shit behind the seat.